Welcome. I'm Betty Van Pelt. I am with the League of Women Voters. On the behalf of the League of Women Voters and all of the volunteers who are assisting, we'd like to welcome the candidates for Sandy City Council at large and for districts 2 and 4 for the city council positions and all of the Sandy residents here tonight. We'd like to begin with a Indigenous land acknowledgement. Given that the Salt Lake Valley has been gathering place for Indigenous peoples, we first want to acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homelands for the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes, and is a crossroad for many Indigenous peoples. Excuse me. We recognize the relationships between many Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands and are grateful for the territory on which we gather today. We would like to thank Mayor Zoltansky for enabling the League to use Sandy City Hall tonight, and all of the staff, especially Kim Bell, Jamie Jacobson, Nick Stenquist, and Dave Goldhart, and all the time and assistance they have provided in making this happen. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented and engaged in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and litigation at local, state, and national levels. In carrying out our mission, the League strives to deliver unbiased education to voters to help them cast an informed ballot. In advance of the election cycle, the League hosts hundreds of candidate forums across the country, enabling voters to engage with and hear directly from the candidates and to form their own opinions. We were greatly alarmed to hear about illegal anonymous flyers that were mailed to voters regarding Aaron DeKaiser. We applaud the action of Sandy City in calling for an end to the mailers and further investigation to the source. We also applaud all city council candidates for signing the pledge of fair campaign practices in January and subsequent statements made by several to condemn this type of campaigning and commit to fair, issue-focused, focused campaigns. Sorry. And not yet. Sorry. A strong democracy relies on well-informed, constructively engaged electorate. The hallmark of democracy is the willingness of our community candidates and voters to treat each other with courtesy and respect. In this spirit, the League is here this evening to engage in a vital part of our democratic process, a civilized discussion of the important issues that confront our communities. Our moderator will share with you shortly how we structured the candidate discussion and related ground rules to help us accomplish this goal. At the end of the night, I'll be back. The moderator for this evening is Shauna Bona, the current president of the League of Women Voters. We are actually both Sandy residents. Lost my place, sorry. Shauna is a corporate learning strategist and co-founder of McKinnon Mulhern, Inc., a strategic communication firm. She previously served as the president-elect of the League of Women Voters, as chair of the County and Local Government Committee, which is also known as the Observer Corps, and as leader of the Night Owls Unit. Her other past volunteer services include the Ronald McDonald House Charities of the Intermountain area, the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault, the Girl Scouts of America, and Inspiration Hospice. I would like to welcome Shauna to the podium.
All right. Thank you so much, Betty, and everyone here. And I just want to echo Betty's appreciation for the candidates and for the city for this event. So my job now is to talk a little bit about our ground rules and how we're going to organize this event. So first off, I'll just reiterate that we do have a goal of conducting candidate forums with civility and respect. And so we have rules that are designed for just that. So first off, for the candidates, you are not permitted to interrupt one another or to interrupt me as a moderator during our panel discussion. And you may, however, ask me to repeat a question or ask for a question to be clarified. Direct rebuttals are not allowed. However, you may choose to use part of your closing statement to rebut or clarify a previous comment. I do want to just reiterate, and I think we're all good, that we had agreed not to have notes, not for the candidates, not to have notes. You can take notes now, but not to have brought up like a crib sheet or anything, or to write anything on your hand or anything like that. Yeah, just go ahead. No, I'm just reiterating it for the fairness of everyone. Okay. Oh, it's okay. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, no worries. Not calling anybody out, but just want to make sure that we're fair there. Okay. Audience, this is very important. Please refrain from cheering, jeering, or other expressions of support or disagreement following a candidate's response. Instead, please hold off on all your applause until the end of the forum, at which time I'll invite you all to applaud all of the candidates. Also, don't engage in side conversations or other disruptions during discussion. You are welcome to exit if you find that it's difficult to follow these rules. We ask you, though, to please, particularly like if you have to have a bathroom break or something, don't leave right while someone's talking, but wait till the period in between the questions. It is the truth that if people do disrupt, I'll pause the forum and we'll wait until the things settle down. And if we can't have a civil conversation, if people fail to abide by the ground rules, we may cease. So hopefully we will all do a great job of behaving in civil ways, and we'll hold our questions till the end, and everything will go well. For everyone involved, and everybody has already followed this rule, not bringing in banners or signs. So don't whip them out because they're not allowed in this room. And please silence all your cell phones and other mobile devices. For those of you who are participating virtually by Zoom, you will remain muted during the discussion, but you can submit questions during using the Q&A function. And if you're having any technical issues, feel free to text us at 801-694-9446. That's 801-694-9446. All right. Just so everybody knows how we came up with the questions that we're going to ask, because I know that's something that's important to everyone. First off, we took initial input on topics solicited from league members who reside in Sandy and who have attended Sandy City meetings. Tapping into that mindset helped us touch on issues that are not only top of mind for Sandy voters, but also are within the scope and responsibility of the city council. So it's kind of hard, but we really want to ask our candidates about things that they can do something about. Then from there, we had a planning team who looked through all of that and came up with a set of questions that align with league guidelines and can be covered within our allotted time. Although we shared a list of those topics with our candidates, they have not been provided these questions in advance. So they're going to have to come up with their answers on the fly. The time for the allotted response for each question will be announced before I read it. And we have timekeepers who are going to monitor and signal to the candidates the amount of time remaining, including when their time is ended. And I will enforce the time limits. So I just want to pause right now and say, these are our timekeepers up front here. And I want to, if you'll hold up a sign, just let's make sure all of the candidates can freely see you. Just, y'all good? Okay, great. Okay. That's there's not. However, I also want to let the audience know. So we've carved out time at the end, and I'll make sure we have that time to answer any questions that the audience may have. We have volunteers from the League of Women Voters who are collecting those questions, and they'll continue to collect them for the first hour of our time here today. So they're at the back here. Iragi and Julie, if you guys want to wave. If you have a question, There are cards and pens at the back, and you can give your questions to them. League volunteers will collect those questions, and the selection of the questions and the modification of the questions will be made at their discretion. And we're doing that to eliminate redundancy with our prepared questions, make sure those questions are relevant to the office of City Council, and ensure adherence to the league question guidelines of neutrality. That being said, there's also a half hour at the end after our time for the panel discussion. So all the candidates are staying. They'll be able to answer your questions. So you will have an opportunity to get your questions answered. All right, now on to the agenda. All candidates will have an opening statement, and then we will participate in a moderated discussion where I'm going to ask each of them the same questions. This will continue until 7:20, and then we will conclude with closing statements. Actually, that's a little 7:40. Then we'll conclude with closing statements, followed up by wrap-up comments from Betty, our MC. After that, again, you're willing to have informal discussion with the candidates afterward. Now, our candidates drew for the order of their opening statements at the beginning, and the order is as follows. First, and I'm just going to informally use your first names and beg for the pardon for that. First is Jim, then Marcy, then Brooke, then Cindy, then Scott, then Allison, then Aaron. As we advance through the questions after those opening statements, I'm going to start at this end and go to that end. And then each time we'll go down a notch so that everybody gets a turn at being the first person to answer a question. We want to thank Allison, because she's going to participate in the opening statements. And then since she's running unopposed, free up time and make it available for our candidates who have opposition. So we thank her for that and for freeing up that time. The closing statements will go in the reverse order of the opening statements. So with all of those rules, let's get started. Before you start, I just want to say you have 1 minute each for your opening statements. No. Yeah.
All right, time's up. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jim Bennett. I come from a political family, but my father, former Senator Bob Bennett, was not the first member of our family to hold office. Neither was my grandfather, who was also a United States Senator. But that honor goes to a man named Daniel H. Wells, who was my great-great-grandfather and the third mayor of Salt Lake City. And prior to coming west, he was a practicing attorney in Illinois at the same time as Abraham Lincoln. And the story goes that Daniel H. Wells met Abraham Lincoln and said to him, "You, sir, are a dead man, for I swore to myself if I ever met a man who was uglier than I was, I would shoot him on sight." To which Abraham Lincoln replied, "Shoot away. If I'm uglier than you, I don't want to live." And I heard that story when I was told how much I look like Daniel H. Wells. And so that's kind of the legacy I'm trying to bring to this. I'm very excited tonight. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about issues. I think the two biggest challenges we face in Sandy City are growth and economic development. And I want to focus on those as we have this discussion, but I'm very glad to be here with you tonight. And thank you for the opportunity.
Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, Marcy. Oh, yeah, of course, you're allowed to stand. You're allowed to move around. Yeah.
If I could, there we go. We're working. Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Marcy Hausman, candidate for City Council District 4. Move to the middle, I'm being told, so I can be seen online. That work? Thank you for that. If you were to ask me what is something that has driven me to community service, similar to Mr. Bennett's story, I would tell you that a career Army officer by the name of Martin Pennock, who is my father and recently passed and will be buried in Arlington National Cemetery. He and my mother taught me that when you are in a new community, because being in the Army brat, we live in a lot of places. They taught me that when you become a part of a community, you get involved. You bloom where you were planted and you seek to elevate those around you. And so that's why I have been serving on the council. It's why I want to continue to serve. I believe it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work and accomplish great things on behalf of our residents. So I'd love another term for 4 years. Thank you.
Okay, Brooke.
Hi, I am Brooke Christensen, and I'm excited to be here tonight. I think you guys all came to ask questions and to get to know the people who are running for city council. So I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I have a husband. His name is Ben. We have 3 children who are almost all teenagers, so you should feel really bad for me about that, but they're cute. I also volunteer in our community extensively. I'm on a number of committees, Health Center Theater, PTAs at 3 different schools in Sandy, just a variety of things that I love to do in our community to give back and make sure that we're serving. That is one of my biggest tenets in life, is to make sure that we're serving those around us. So that's who I am. I previously was on the city council from 2017 to 2021, and I'm currently the only candidate for at-large that's endorsed by both the fire and police unions, which I'm extremely proud of to have earned their trust. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. That is going way too fast, that timer. That is amazing. My name is Cindy Sharkey. I am the incumbent in the at-large race, which means I've been serving 1 term, so 4 years. Prior to that, I was a planning commissioner for 2.5 years in Sandy, and this all started with winning the Sandy Citizen Achievement Award in 2017. That's how everything started. I am a business executive in the IT industry. I've been in IT for 40 years, a very long time. I was a regional director of a $40 billion tech company. I was a vice president of sales of a $50 million company. And then I started my own IT executive recruiting firm, and that's what I've been doing. I do feel that my experience in private sector and managing operations in private sector is very helpful in my city council service as well. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scott Earl. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I'm running for the District 4 seat, which is south of Dimpledale and east of 700 East to the mountains there. My wife is with me, Leanne. She's my rock. She's helped me through the whole campaign. I have 4 kids. We have 3 grandkids. I was a Parks and Recreation Director for 35 years. I worked for the fire department for 10 years, so I have about 40 years of experience with the city. And I love service. I love our city, and I look forward to serving the residents for another 4 years, and we're excited to move forward. So thank you.
We'll try it. Oh, there we go. My name is Allison Stroud, and I am running District 2 unopposed. I have been a lifelong Sandy resident. I too start with military background. I'm a Army Reserve and National Guard veteran. Service has been in my blood since I was little, volunteering in different things since I was very young, and then including military service. I'm a current Canyon School District educator. So I teach 3rd graders. I spend my day with 27 8-year-olds and trying to develop them into future leaders, and using my experience with the council to be able to put that into them so that they can take this position at some point in the future. The past 4 years have been an amazing opportunity. I look forward to continuing with that, working with the council to keep Sandy an amazing, prosperous place to live, work, and play.
Hey, Erin.
Green, thank you so much. My name is Aaron DeKaiser. I grew up in Sandy, went to school here, graduated from Hillcrest High School. I'm really excited to be running for Sandy City Council again. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My wife, Nichelle, and I are proud supporters. And I want to thank all the residents for coming out. I think it's super important that you get into the public process and come out here, candidates talk about the issues and kind of sift through what's been written to find out the truth. It's really important that we do that as a community. And as someone who's knocked over 20,000 doors in the past 3 years, I've had hundreds of meaningful conversations with residents, and I am genuinely the candidate of the people. There's a lot of things the people want done that aren't happening, and so it's time that we elect someone who's going to do something about it. I've heard from many residents, the #1 main issue in Sandy is public safety. We need to slow down speeding. We need to invest in better crosswalk infrastructure. We need to invest in our police and fire. I'm happy to have the Sandy City Fire endorsement. We need to focus on our growth in the cairns to increase sales revenues and finally fight the gondola. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. And I don't mean to be rude, but I will. I'll just jump in and say thank you. Okay, great. All right, thanks to everyone for your opening statements, and Allison, just feel free whenever you want to go. Okay, so we're going to we're gonna go ahead and start down at this end with Scott. And question 1 is about your sense of priorities, and you will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer these. To answer these questions. So here's the question. Help us understand the type of leader you will be by describing your 2 highest priorities for change in our city, both for the short and the long term.
Thank you for the question. My top priority is public safety. Police and fire are extremely important to the city and to our residents, I believe, and it leads to safe neighborhoods, places where people feel good about walking down streets or on trails or in parks or at city events. And so I think the core of a good city is good public safety. My next priority is, I think, emergency management. Right now, with the way the current affairs are in the world, the cities work very hard at emergency management, and Amy DeNeff, a sergeant with the police department, along with the fire department and other city departments, have worked really hard in planning for different scenarios. And I think we need to continue planning for those, but I also think that we need to bring the residents into those scenarios so that they know what's happening and what the city's able to do if the earthquake or if something major was to happen in the city. And I think by doing that, we can also educate our citizens so that they can be prepared for emergencies in their homes and in their neighborhoods. So those are my top 2: public safety, police, fire, and prepare our city for emergencies, along with the residents being prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that question. And I will also stress that I think across the board, we know that a city that is not keeping its residents safe is not accomplishing its #1 priority. So what I'd like to say, in addition to noting that public safety has to be our first and top priority as a city, I'd like to just unpack a little bit what I've done in terms of expanding the definition of safety. So in thinking of your safety, as well as the safety of our first responders, I have been thinking a lot and working on inviting our departments to invest in public safety in a proactive way, thinking about physical safety and mental wellness. So how do we think carefully about proactive safety investments so that we don't have to be as reactive? So that's, again, one of my top priorities is safety of both our first responders and all of our residents. Second, we've got to start paying more attention to economic development. We cannot get lost in all of the growth that is happening in terms of economic development. And I don't mean housing, I mean economic. We have been able to keep our property taxes low for many, many years. And I think that's something to be proud of. The reason we've been able to do that is because we have fostered such incredible economic development. That has been our engine to keep property taxes low. I want to fight property taxes wherever possible. And one of the ways we do that is economic development.
I want to echo that, because I take a backseat to no one when it comes to commitment to public safety and to all of the things that the city needs to do for its residents. In order to be able to do that, you need to have revenue. And in order to generate revenue, this city has passed a property tax increase that I think represents to some degree a failure of vision. that it's economic development that can create the amount of revenue that we need to be able to fund all of our public services that are necessary. And we have so many empty storefronts in this city. You know, the Sandy Mall is a ghost town. It's essential that we focus on economic development in order to be able to ensure Sandy's future. The other priority is dealing also with population growth. We don't have any more room to grow this way, which means we have to grow this way. And nobody wants high density housing in their backyard, which is why I want to focus on what I want to lean into the Cairns master plan and the idea of a sort of urban island right here around City Hall. This is the area where you have the infrastructure to be able to support high density housing and high density sorts of developments. And it would take the pressure off of the developments that want to spring up everywhere else and having an apartment building in your backyard. I want to make sure that we're able to preserve the quality of life for all Sandy residents. And that means creating different varieties of ways that we accommodate growth. And I think that starts right here in downtown. Thanks.
All right, so top priorities, public safety. Obviously, you've heard about that from everyone up here. Violent crimes are increasing in Sandy. We are soon to have a new MVP shelter coming in that will increase demands on our firefighters. We need to make sure that we have adequate resources and funding for those things. Next would be, it's a combined item in my mind, but the fiscal conservative item and being really aware of where the growth is going in our city. I too agree that the growth should happen in the Cairns area. That's between 90th South and 106 South, the track station and the freeway. That's where we put our density. But at the same time, we need to focus on our economics. The problem with Sandy is that with Point of the Mountain development coming in, Sandy is no longer going to be the regional hub that it has been. Our new business opportunities are going to decline as they grow. It's just what's going to happen. All of the new exciting things are going there. So we have to decide what kind of community Sandy wants to be for the future. Do we need to bring in economics if we can? Absolutely. But do we want to bring it in at the detriment to our residents? I don't personally. I want to focus on the residents and the priorities that we have now as Sandy residents and make sure that this stays a great place to live.
The type of leader I am can be reflected in my campaign. I'm out in neighborhoods every single day, knocking doors, having meaningful conversations with residents to win this election. My two priorities, as I mentioned, top is public safety. I've talked to hundreds of residents in Sandy who live on 30-mile-per-hour and 35-mile-per-hour roads where drivers consistently drive 50-mile-per-hours. I've been in crosswalks with crossing guards with stop signs up, having cars drive through at excessive speeds. And it's unacceptable. So I want to invest resources in that, use the latest planning and zoning literature to re-up our roads and reinvest in our community to make them safer. Because, with incidents that have happened in Cottonwood Heights, unfortunately, recently, that just should not happen in any community. And so there's a lot of things we can do to it to increase it, but you have to hold council members accountable for saying what they say they're going to do. I've talked to numerous residents who feel like they've been left behind and nothing's being acted on. And so it's time that the people elect someone who's going to do something about it. The second main issue is growth. That's a lot of the work I've done in our community was around growth. And it's why I won the Sandy City Volunteer of the Year Award. There are so many challenges as our city grows, but I agree with Brooke and Jim that we need to focus on the Cairns Master Plan. It's actually out on my table, some of it. If you want to check it out, I'm a committee member of the Sandy Pace of Progress. We're updating our master plan for the first time since 1979. So it's an excellent multi-use, walkable secondary downtown that we can increase revenue with.
Public safety has always been and will always be #1 in Sandy. So I'm going to set that aside for a second. It's always been the largest part of our budget and it always will. The things that we really are challenged with that are my priorities are planning for growth and managing that growth. Those are the headwinds that we're really facing right now. So being able to plan and manage for the growth that we know is coming our way, that's with infrastructure, that's with budgeting, that's with open space preservation, all the things, the quality of life issues that our citizens want, need, and have the right to demand from us. And the second thing is it coincides with growth, but the second thing is taxation. And that's something that I'm concerned about as well. I have voted against 3 property tax increases in Sandy, finding other ways to balance the budget, giving the city what we needed, the residents what they needed. I'm concerned about the ongoing trends and having to manage a budget. But what really works cooperatively with needing to manage a budget and reduce taxation is economic development. Treating our businesses very well, attracting businesses to Sandy is vital for us. Our #1 source of revenue in Sandy is sales tax revenue. The benefit of that is it keeps the burden on the property owners low. So I'll continue to focus on economic development.
Thank you. Okay, for this question, we'll start with Marcy, and it will be, you will also have a minute and a half for this one each. And this one's about civic engagement. What efforts would you undertake to build community beyond your own neighborhood? As you answer, please let us know how much time you currently invest in community building and how much time you are willing to invest going forward.
Thank you. Great question. That does lean back to my opening statement. So I'll reiterate that I've lived in a lot of communities. And so I've been able to see the things that make a community vibrant and those things that are missing, and how we might lean into those things. So civic engagement is incredibly important. And some ways that I've done that, particularly on the city council, one of the things that I have really enjoyed doing is using the Utah State has published at no cost to us, has surveyed our residents and asked them, what does healthy community connection look like for you? What does it feel? What does the city do to help you feel like you belong? That data has been incredibly important. I'm very data driven. I think it's important to use good questions to gather great data and then make the best decisions possible with that data. So we've been able to use that survey data. I've taken that survey data out to the community. We've held different community group conversations around, hey, this is what our data says. What are your thoughts on ways we could improve? I always believe it's starting with data. You start with what is working and celebrate that. Then you dig into what is not working and you come up with some solutions. So that's one of the things I've currently done to build some and foster some community engagement and ask the community what we need to be doing to increase their feeling of connectedness, because connectedness contributes to mental wellness.
Okay, thank you.
I moved to Sandy City 21 years ago to come serve as the city's communications director. And I had 4 young children at the time. We had another one when we got here. And all 5 of them have proudly worn the Sandy City soccer colors as they've engaged in all of the kinds of things that Sandy City has to offer them. We have benefited from the kind of community engagement that Sandy City has actively fostered for the past 2 decades. And we've been part of the amphitheater. We've been part of all the Parks and Rec sort of programs. And that's one of the great reasons people want to live in Sandy, is that those services and those kinds of things encourage community engagement. And I want to be on the front lines of making sure that those continue and that those expand in ways that allow for future families to have the great experience that my family has had since we've come to Sandy City. So I think it's imperative that we focus on community engagement, because that is one of the fundamental reasons people want to live here. And I want to see an expansion of what's been going on at the amphitheater. I've heard a lot of people complain about the fact that season tickets during the last administration were changed so drastically that that kind of a community engagement thing no longer exists. I want to explore doing some more things to bring those back. But I think that that's really one of the crown jewels of Sandy City, and want to make sure that that continues.
How much time do I spend community building? I would say most of my time. In fact, I'd go as far almost to say all of my time I spend community building. That's just kind of how my life runs. I have 3 children. Raising them, I think, builds the community. I also work on the Mount Jordan PTA. So I help that school. It's a lower economic status school that my children go to. I help at Union Middle School PTSA. I was the president last year, and this year I'm a secretary. I run the service club at Hillcrest High School. I am part of the Jordan High School Alumni Association. I sit on the Hell Center Theater Board. I've sat previously on the South Valley Chamber of Commerce Board, the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns, the Jordan River Commission. I'm very active in the Arthritis Foundation of Utah. We've done all of the sports things for every child, AYSO and Utah Tennis and all of the fun kid things. And last year, my 5th grade son, his teacher quit in the middle of January at a Title I school, and they could not find anyone else to teach the class. And I am not a teacher, but I stepped in and I taught 5th grade for 5 months, which was definitely not part of my community building plan, in case you were wondering. I was also very active in my church and in my political party, and I've organized the Day of Service for Sandy for 2021. Thank you.
First, to be a build community, I would be a leader that is welcoming and connective. If you've ever been to a city council meeting, sometimes it's a little bit intimidating, and residents need to feel welcome and connected to that body. And so I would be a council member who would bring people in like that. I'm for public education and community initiatives where we can all learn and grow together. I support recreation, arts, parks, things that make Sandy a great place to live and work. I invest a ton of time in community service right now. I'm the past president of the Utah Society for Environmental Education. I'm the past chair of the Utah chapter of the International Dark Sky Association, where I worked closely with Sandy City for 2 years on our recent transition to LED lighting. I was the chair of the Sandy Sustainability Focus Group, where I worked directly with Shane Pace at the city for 18 months to create the curbside glass recycling program. I'm currently a board member of the Sandy Pace of Progress Committee, or a committee member rather, and also a board member of Alliance House, which works on helping people with serious and persistent mental illness. So as a council member, I would continue to do that work. Like I said, my campaign of working hard every day for residents will reflect how I will conduct myself as a council member.
I often say that serving as a council member is a full-time job masquerading as a part-time job, and you only see part of it. Tuesday nights at the council meetings, that is a tiny part of what we do. I fought to become part of Sandy City. I was in unincorporated Salt Lake County, and I realized all the things that Sandy had to offer. And serving as a council member, you get up close and personal on what all those things are and how you can improve them. Part of what we do as council members is we interact with the public every single day. So it is taking phone calls, texts, emails, working on projects that members of the public ask you to work on. We have committee assignments. Earlier this morning, I was a member of the Convention Facilities Advisory Board, where we were talking about what to do with the Expo Center. What additional things can we do with the Expo Center, additional kinds of draw and things that we can do there to bring more business to Sandy, which brings more revenue to Sandy, which brings more people to use our facilities here. I'm on the League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee. That works on lobbying the legislature on things that cities, including Sandy, need. But it also means working with our businesses in Sandy. What do they need? What makes a vibrant community for them, and how would they connect with our city? Scott.
Thank you. So on one end of civic engagement is, you know, the city council and the hours that we put into each meeting and the conversations with citizens, the emails and the texts and the phone calls and things. So that's really hugely important. The other end of it, I think, is in neighborhoods and actually being able to help and assist in your neighborhoods with neighborhood projects and things. I happen to have the pleasure of working for the Parks and Recreation Department for a lot of years, and we had a great team there that actually built a lot more little teams with the youth and people like that in soccer and baseball and junior jazz. And so I got to see firsthand how that changed some of those kids' lives and even some of the parents' lives, because the networking that happens at those fields is almost as important as the games that happen at the fields. The parents get to talk about what's happening in their lives and their part of the community. And there's a lot of engagement that happens, you know, on those sports fields or in those gymnasiums. So the other thing that's really important too is Sandy Pride. So I've been involved in Sandy Pride, I think, every year that it's happened. And we actually, with the citizens and our Parks Department, built Falcon, Bell Canyon, the Ski Connect, and Aspen Meadows Park with the citizens' help. And so civic engagement is huge, and it's part of building a city, trust, and pride. Thank you.
All right, thanks to all of you. Our next question is going to be about budget, and we're actually going to have 2 budget questions. So you're only going to have 1 minute to answer each one of them. Okay, so the first one, and we're going to be starting with you, Jim. The first one is this. A number of city council members have said they will never raise property taxes. So first, would you make the same pledge? Why or why not? 1 minute.
I have memories of George Bush saying, "Read my lips, no new taxes," and having it blow up in his face. These kinds of pledges, my pledge is to make sure that I take into account Sandy City residents and their needs, and that my focus will be on raising revenue outside of property taxes, not on property taxes. I don't want to tie myself into any kind of absolutely none, under no circumstances. I want to say that my focus is with a recognition that property tax increases represent a failure of vision. That a property tax increase means that we haven't done enough to stimulate economic development in this city to meet the city's revenue needs. And so that's where my focus will be, and that's where my focus will always be, regardless of what happens. I can't imagine every contingency that's going to arise, but that's the general principle that's going to guide me.
No, I would not agree to that pledge. There are instances where property taxes do need to be raised. I'm going to be completely honest with you. In Sandy, we have one of the lowest property taxes in the state, even with our recent increases. Now, with that said, do we want to raise property taxes? No, we want to find other options. I think that any large expenditures need to be voted on by residents. Things like Alta Canyon, the fire station that will be on the ballot this time. We need to vote on those as residents and decide how we're going to spend that money collectively, because it impacts us all greatly in each of our budgets. That's it.
I'll continue this line and say, no, I could not agree to pledge to not raise taxes. I don't know everything about a city. A few years ago when I very first ran, they handed me the budget book. It's like this thick, and there's a lot that goes into it. Mostly as a council member, you need to be asking good, smart questions to figure out how to wade through the budget, because it is just too technical of a document. And it's why we have a city department focused on doing that. And so we set the vision and the policy, and they can make it happen. So ideally, like Jim mentioned, we want to focus on increasing revenue in the city. I think the Cairns is a great way to do that. We can relook at some of our zoning. There are certain businesses in Sandy, for example, that cannot operate outside of an industrial zone, which is different than other cities. And so I think taking a good look at that to incentivize businesses to come to Sandy to generate that revenue first is how I would want to run the city, like a business. And then as a last result, use taxes to make sure that we have adequate services like funding for police and fire. Thank you.
I'm a fiscal conservative. I call myself the tightwad of the council. Some people think maybe to a fault. We have a $150 million budget and 5,000 lines of income and expense. Our job as council members is to look at every single line of it and figure out how to balance the budget, give the residents and the businesses everything they need, give the employees everything they need without raising taxes. If we do have to raise taxes, it should be the last resort. We should look at every other possibility first. I don't come to any issue with my mind made up. I study and analyze every single one. So I would never say I refuse to ever raise taxes, just like I wouldn't say I'll raise taxes every year. Our job is to come to every issue with a lack of bias and an open mind and study the issue from the bottom up and decide how to balance our budget, where it needs to be budgeted.
Thank you.
So thank you. So I would not take the pledge either. And I was one of the 5 city council members that voted to increase the taxes this year. Might as well get that elephant out of the room. But I did that because I felt strongly about our police and fire, our fire department having what's called 3-2 staffing. So 3 people on a fire engine and 2 people on an ambulance as far as the paramedics go at every station. And I feel like that helps strengthen the safety and security of our city. It also helped with some of our employees that hadn't been caught up to kind of industry standards for a long time. And we were able to bring them up to where we can keep them and not having to keep replacing employees. So, so that'll do it. Thank you.
I believe in limited government. I believe that just because we have the authority to raise taxes doesn't mean we should. I believe that we should, as Councilwoman Sharkey said, you really use the information to dissect what is needed and determine when and if a tax increase is needed. I'm not just a no. I didn't just say no to the property tax increase. I'm a solutions-oriented person. So I study a challenge, and if I am thinking about the challenge, I am thinking about a solution. So I came forward with a solution that met the needs of the city, addressed the staffing in an ongoing manner for our fire department, provided a very, very generous compensation plan, and would have done so without a property tax increase. So I believe the tax increase sometimes is necessary, but this one in particular, we could have met the needs of the city, addressed our staffing, addressed compensation plan, and done it without a property tax increase.
Okay, thanks to all of you. And this one, we're gonna start with you, Brooke. So I guess what we really want to know is if we need to generate revenue and we don't want to raise property taxes, because it sounds like it's our least desirable method. What, if we need more revenue, what would you do to generate more revenue, or what would you cut from the current budget? And that's 1 minute for this.
So I think there's a number of projects that have been approved by Sandy City in the Cairns district, but haven't actually come to fruition. In my mind, I'm thinking of 3 hotels that were, when I was on the council and I left in 2021, they were approved to be built that would bring in additional revenue and haven't been. So I would say those are solid things that we would need to go after and figure out why those aren't built and what we can do to get those going as a city. That's specifically to increase our revenue. In terms of spending, yes, I do think that there's things in the budget we can adjust, but they aren't going to be things that everyone likes. We need to focus on our needs and not our wants as a city. And that's a hard place to agree for everyone to come to. And maybe we don't have quite as many elaborate community events, which we all love, but we spend less money in the meantime.
As I've said, I think focusing on the Cairns development to multi-million-dollar project is a great way to increase revenue. Also, as mentioned, changing our zoning to allow for mixed use zoning, having places where residents are living amongst businesses that generate revenue. I think that's super important. We need to incentivize businesses to come to Sandy. We have so many vacant and abandoned properties throughout the city that we really need to invest in those to revitalize our local communities and keeping our shopping local. I think that as far as cuts go, there's plenty of places to do it. As I said, that budget document is super huge, so I'm not sure exactly, but what I can tell you from working against the gondola for so many years is I'm pretty disenchanted with the hundreds of thousands of dollars the city spent as part of the Central Wasatch Commission because we got nothing out of it. So I have noticed that as people get elected, they kind of direct money to their pet projects and things like that. I would have a complete overhaul of the budget to have a more sensible, responsible budget.
Thank you.
Adding to what's already been said about development and economic development, grants, donations, and I sponsored a brand new idea in Sandy that was embraced and approved by the city council, which is selling naming rights to the private sector in order to attract private money into Sandy for the building of capital projects. I've been meeting with some of the largest corporations in Utah to feel out their willingness to invest in Sandy and our infrastructure needs by contributing to naming rights on certain buildings or facilities that Sandy might be in a position to build. So this is a brand new concept that's never been used in Sandy that holds the potential for saving us millions and millions of dollars.
So I think the best way to do it without raising taxes is through economic development and sales taxes. That's the best way. So if the economy's hot, the economy's going well, we can get new business in the Cairns area and other parts of the city, then sales tax will go up. The problem is, like back in 07 and 08, when the economy took a nosedive and we started losing sales tax, we really had to pull back in the city, which we did. But we did recover from it. The other thing is in Park and Rec and other city departments, we were allowed to charge fees. And so based on soccer programs and pavilion rentals and cemetery, our golf course, things like that, we actually paid for a lot of our departmental operations from within the Parks and Recreation Fund. So I would consider asking other departments to see if there's things that they're doing now that aren't normally covered under tax basis, that there would be a fee imposed for that to help offset the budget.
All right, so 3 things that I have been doing and will continue doing as I continue to serve on the council. One is continue to refine our approach to budgeting. I've been working on this for 4 years. As a you know, you can imagine a body of 7. It takes a little while for us to move the needle on some things, but outcome-based budgeting is a highly effective way to provide visibility to taxpayers into how we are spending our money, because our focus first is on what are our priorities, what outcomes are we chasing with those priorities, how do we measure them, and then we invest. So outcome-based budgeting. Redevelopment. We've talked a lot tonight about economic development, but there are places in our city that need serious attention for redevelopment, repurposing how our commercial areas are being used. And then third, there's some spending we need to cut. I spoke up during the budget process. There was some things that we were spending, pledged or proposed to spend money on. We didn't need to. For example, $75,000 on a puzzle that was not necessary. Thank you.
I want to reinforce everything that's been said about economic development because that's clearly the key. But there's one other element that we haven't talked about, which is the fact that Sandy City is a part of Salt Lake County, which is a part of the state of Utah, which is a part of the United States of America, which means there's county, state, and federal money that could be used to improve the lives of Sandy City. And when I worked for Sandy City, we were on top of doing that. The reason the soccer stadium got built is because we went out of our way to cooperate with the state in order to be able to get some of the revenue to be able to do that. We don't seem to be doing any of that anymore. And I've had a tremendous experience working on Capitol Hill, both here and in Washington, D.C., and believe that it's imperative that we start creating partnerships with other elements of government in order to be able to satisfy. I mean, I think that's how we can get a rec center. That's how we can do all these kinds of things if we're willing to partner with other agencies. And I want to see Sandy City reach out and do that. We used to do it very well. We don't seem to be doing it all anymore.
Thank you. Okay, before we move to the next question, I just want to say last call for audience questions. If you had wanted to submit something and you hadn't, please take it to the back of the room right away. Okay, so this next question is a lightning round question, which basically means we just want you to raise your hand if you would say yes to what I'm about to ask. So This election, Sandy City residents, as I hope you all know, will have the opportunity to vote on a ballot proposition to issue a general obligation bond for building a new main fire station and fire department headquarters in the Cairns district. So raise your hand if you support issuing a $21 million general obligation bond to rebuild Fire Station 31. Okay, thank you very much. Next up, quickly, also a lightning round. The City Council recently approved building a new Alta Canyon Sports Center rather than upgrading and renovating the current building. Rebuilding is projected to cost $40 million. By a show of hands, raise your hand to show if you support funding construction through a general obligation bond. And then finally, actually, I'm just going to ask everyone, if we do build the center, do you believe it should be relocated to a more central location?
Alta Canyon Center?
Yeah, moving it. Anybody support moving it? Okay, thank you. Okay. This question goes to all of us who recognize the importance of zoning and big things that come later. If you could change one thing in our zoning code and our approach to land use in our city, what would it be and why? And this one starts with Aaron. You have, Aaron, you have 1 minute.
So in 2019, I got a certificate from MIT in emergent city design, and we're really having a renaissance moment across the country in city planning and design. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and it's super interesting to read about. But one thing that rings true is that we need to diversify our zoning and have more multi-use zoning as we grow as a city, so we can appropriately plan for increased density, appropriately connect people with walkable, bikeable pathways, and have things built next to transit. I'm a realtor, so I'm very familiar with land use, but another big thing is that on the state books, there's a law that encourages apartment developments instead of condos. And as a realtor, my main goal is to spread homeownership as far and wide as possible. And so I think that we need to lobby against that so that our city is better able to incentivize developers to build properties where people have an ownership interest and pride in their city.
We're in the process right now of developing a new master plan in Sandy. So all these questions about zoning are under consideration, under discussion right now. One of the things that I would like to change in Sandy, I brought this up 4 years ago. I continue to bring it up. I'm trying to get people, the staff to consider my request. I would love to eliminate park strips as a residential design standard in Sandy. I have brought this up with the Public Utilities Department, who loves the idea. I've brought it up with the Planning Department, who is suspicious of the idea. I've brought it up with the Public Works Department, who said, where are we going to put the snow when we push it off the streets? But we're having a problem right now with people converting their park strips to rock rubble, and now we're getting horrendous weed problems in Sandy. So I would like to go the route of eliminating park strips as a residential design standard in building altogether. Thank you.
So I think my biggest thing is when a developer or somebody comes into the city and they say they want to build a hotel or a Maverick gas station or whatever the case may be, and it's in a certain location and the city thinks it may work there, and we vote to change the zoning. Well, now all of a sudden the thing that we think was going to work there decides they can't afford to build that, or they decide to go to a different city or whatever the case may be. So now that zoning has been changed to what we just thought was going to come in. And sometimes that catches us off guard with future developments. And what I'm getting to is up in 2013, the council changed the zoning by that piece by the library. And that was because there was supposed to be a gas station coming in. So they changed the zoning. So now it can be mixed use and include apartments. It's not going to work there because of the roads and how that all functions. And staff is recommending against that. So, but that's a way it can come back and catch you as far as the zoning issue.
Thank you.
So I really like the idea of mixed use zoning as well, and I'll give you kind of a picture of why. So earlier I mentioned redevelopment. Sandy is pretty built out, so we know that development is going to have to be very carefully constructed. But redevelopment, there are opportunities, and the way we get to redevelopment is thinking about zoning our commercial areas in a different way. So in Sandy, we have a lot of commercial areas that are not doing very well. We need to support them in thinking about how we repurpose the use of that is currently zoned exclusively commercial. What could it be zoned to in terms of a multi-use? I give one example. Beehive Charter is now in the very old, 15 seconds, Charter. Shopco was empty for a long time and is now Beehive Charter. That is a great example of repurposing and revitalizing an area that was somewhat down on its luck.
I want to build on that because I was hired by the city after I left as communications director. I was rehired as a consultant to work on building a Broadway-style theater. Just across where that old parking structure is across from City Hall, and the funding fell through, but they created a redevelopment agency in order to do that. And the idea would be essentially that the theater would get a tax holiday to a large degree. The sales tax it would generate would be reinvested in their business. And that was provided as an incentive to get these people here. And once that tax holiday was over, then it would be generating sales tax for decades to come. Those kinds of incentives, I think, are things that we need to explore because we're competing in an entirely new business environment. We're not just trying to attract businesses from other cities. We're trying to attract businesses that have gone to the internet. And so I think we need to look at innovative incentives to be able to attract more economic development to the city.
I must be the outlier here. I don't love mixed use development. I don't like businesses in my neighborhood. I think it's unsafe for the residents that live there, for my kids. I like to have a quiet life. And so I am not a big fan of mixed use development. I don't really like the overlay zone that lets you have much smaller zoning, like lot sizes and houses behind houses in Sandy. Those are two things I pretty much don't like. And then something I would love to implement that I tried when I was on the council before and it got voted down is to put in place a good landlord program. We have a lot of rentals in Sandy. You've noticed them increasing in everyone's neighborhood. No neighborhood is exempt from this. So if we have some good landlord rules, then we can hold a standard for our neighborhoods and make sure that they aren't just junk yards and slum landlords.
Okay. This one we'll start with Cindy. It's about government transparency. Tuesday marked one of several deadlines for candidate financial disclosures related to the general election. Please provide the names of your 3 largest donors and the interests and/or relationships they represent with respect to you and/or to the city of Sandy. And you can have 1 minute on that as well.
This feels like a memory test. Okay, hold on. My largest donor is me. Let's see. It's my second largest. My second largest is my Aunt Martha. And my third, so there are 3 that are about the same amount after that. My friend, Chris Nickel, former city council member that I worked with for a couple of years on the council. Some neighbors of mine, Jeff and Joy, and a Sandy business, Schneider Golf. Those are the largest for me.
So mine was, I got appointed to the city council. So this is the first time I've been through an election process. It's a learning curve, huge. But anyway, I interviewed with the Board of Realtors and they gave me a $4,000 appropriation or whatever it is, donation. And then Paul Swenson with Colonial Flag gave me a donation, 2 donations. and a friend of mine from high school, his name's Todd Wadsworth. We've been friends for a long time. Their family owns Wadsworth Construction, and Todd made a donation to my campaign that was good. So thank you.
I also received donation from the Board of Realtors, and I have to give you, part of your question was connection to that. My mother is a realtor. I was able to go to college because my mother was a realtor. She made it possible for me and my sisters to go to college. So when we think about looking for those who are in alignment with what we think is of most importance, the fact that my mom makes homeownership a possibility is something I'm proud of. Also, she defends fiercely property rights, which I do as well. And she believes that we should keep property taxes as low as possible. That's what realtors are about. They are about making home ownership a possibility, allowing people to stay in a home that they love. So that was one of mine. Brad Bonham, got to be quick. He is a local businessman and someone who invests in leadership that stands for conservative values, things that he thinks are important. And so I've received a donation from him. And then similar, I'm out of time for my third one.
Thank you. There'll be time later if anyone wants to walk up and ask you for that third one. Okay, go.
Far and away, my biggest donor is my own business, Canonizer.com, which I own with Brent Alsop, which has donated a great deal of money to my campaign. I've also received a donation from the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. I went and interviewed with them with no expectation, and I saw a check show up at my door, and I was very grateful for it. I didn't make them any promises to get it, and I'm grateful to have it. And the third largest donor I have is I was endorsed by Equality Utah, and they gave me a $500 donation this last time around, and I was very happy to get it. I was able to go to their fun gala downtown. It was a Western themed gala, and I was really kind of out of place. I didn't dress appropriately, but those are my three largest donors.
My largest donor is my husband, Ben, and myself. We are the largest donors to this campaign. Next is the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. I don't know why they decided to give me money. I'm glad they did because campaigns are expensive, but they know how I feel about things, obviously, like mixed use development and where high density housing should be. And yet they still decided to give it to me. So there we go. And then my third largest donor was my mom. So she lives in Sandy. She lives next door to me. She wants to make it clear that my dad was not involved in that because he doesn't like politics. It was just her. So
government transparency is super important, and I encourage everyone to look at all the candidates' financial disclosures. My number one is myself, putting our money where our mouth is. My second biggest supporter is my mother, supports my campaign. And my third, I actually got a $750 donation today, right before the debate, which is super exciting, from Rochelle Gustafson. She is a longtime community member, loves recreating in the canyon, and is a board member for Alliance for a Better Utah. But my campaign in this last round has 4 times the individual number of contributions than everyone else up here combined. And so again, my campaign is powered by residents. It's powered by the people. I'm not funded by big businesses, special interests like the Board of Realtors. And I happen to be a realtor, and I'm not funded by anyone who supports the gondola.
Okay, thanks everyone for that. Okay, this is the last of our prepared questions, and it's a lightning round, and so you'll just be raising your hand, and then we'll have the folks from the back bring us up some audience questions to answer. A National Highway Traffic Safety Administration study found that the autumn and winter months were particularly dangerous for Utah pedestrians. In Cottonwood Heights, as I think many of us know, 3 accidents took the life of 2 men within a span of 2 weeks on Fort Union Boulevard. By a show of hands, to show yes, do you believe that the current traffic calming methods deployed in Sandy across residential areas and arterial streets will be adequate as they are to ensure public safety for those walking and rolling across our roadways in our city? Next. Everybody said yes. Everybody said no. Everybody said no because they didn't raise their hands. Sorry. So no one thinks they're good as they are right now. So it looks like we have to look for other measures. So here are three, and if you could just raise your hand to say whether you support each of them one at a time. First, road redesign at crosswalks. Next, lane reductions. And then finally, use of center median islands. Thank you. Now, maybe, one maybe. Okay, and so now questions from our audience. Okay, this is a two-part question. Okay, so 1 minute and 30 seconds for each one of these for this question because it's two parts. Okay, what is your plan for improving business development in Sandy? Would you support using currently empty facilities rather than building new ones on green space? So that will start with you, Scott.
So I think right now the climate is just, the money's too expensive to borrow. I think as soon as we get a little bit of reduction in that interest rate, I think you'll see more action happening. And I do support, you know, I think that was a great thing what happened up at Target with the Beehive School and that being remodeled into a school and a very usable, nice facility. So I definitely do support that and would like to see more of our empty buildings become occupied by thriving businesses. So however we can help through the RDA or through the city council, or if we need to, you know, help with those types of things with bringing businesses in, I'm happy to be part of that team to do that. Thank you.
Two-part question. So first part, ideas on improving business development. So one of the things we haven't really talked about today is our partnership with the South Valley Chamber. And I don't know if we have any South Valley Chamber members in here, but I have been incredibly impressed with what they've done with that, with supporting Sandy in fostering stronger businesses, in particular, building capacity in business leaders to make better decisions as they are investing in their business. So I would like to really see us continue to strengthen that relationship with South Valley Chamber. I also wonder if sometimes we don't think enough about our businesses as we are considering property tax increases, because we talk often about the impact on residents, but yet the impact on businesses is even more significant. So when residents are paying a greater degree, the businesses are paying an even larger increase. So they carry more of the weight of the increased property tax. So I think we need to carefully be talking about businesses as well as residents when we are considering property tax increases. And then to the second part of the question, empty buildings, I've already alluded to absolutely supporting that. And I don't believe mixed use development is meant to intrude upon our residential areas. What I am talking about is things that are already zoned for businesses, but how do we repurpose that? How do we think of the zoning in a creative way to revitalize something that needs it?
City Sharkey talked about the idea of naming rights for buildings. Those kinds of public-private partnerships are something that we have only scratched the surface of the potential of what they could do. Also, relationships with other government entities. When I ran for mayor 2 years ago, I had a conversation with a school board member who said that they wanted to build an indoor pool next to the outdoor pool at Alta Canyon. And then there could create some kind of relationship with the city where we could share maintenance costs. And Jordan High School would then have a pool. And I said, geez, that's a great idea. Why don't we do it? And he said, well, because the mayor won't return my phone calls. That was the mayor prior to this mayor. I mean, those kinds of partnerships are something that we don't seem to be willing to explore. There's a great deal of money. There's a great deal of resources that are out there in the private sector and also in the state legislature. And in the federal government that we ought to be going after and we ought to be looking at. And instead, we're just sort of focused in our own little island and think we live independently of all of these other entities. when I think one of the great ways to develop business here is to make everybody a co-conspirator, bring everybody in, bring private businesses in. And, you know, what kind of city do you want to live in here? Larry H. Miller Corporation, what do you want to do? If we can reach out to these guys and make them partners with us, I think there's no limit to what we can achieve.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this. The South Valley Chamber, when I was part of that group and on the city council, I worked with our state officials and our economic development agency here in the city. And we implemented a project called the Sports and Tourism Committee that basically allowed all of the hotels to charge 0.5% sales tax that went directly to South Valley Chamber. Well, it goes to the state and then they directed the South Valley Chamber. And with that money, we used it. We partnered with multiple agencies in Utah, downtown mainly, because they have a lot more resources than just Sandy alone does. And all of that money is still being used to bring in every sport. We have football teams coming in, they stay in the hotels, they eat in the restaurants, they go to Health Center Theater, they go to a Real game. All of these things generate a lot of activity. So that's in place and working well. Another thing is the RDA technically falls under the mayor's purview. Not that we can't help, we obviously can, but we have a whole department in the city called the Economic Development and the RDA, which this council is part of the board. And that is their job to bring in new economic opportunities for Sandy. So helping them in any way that they need that would be amazing as a council member as well. And also the federal delegation. Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
I would almost never vote to build on green space. I think that's one of the cherished Sandy values and something that we need to protect. But I think really the council needs to lead out on its vision for what we want the city to look like in the end. As it's evident, there's very little land left to develop. And so we need to be very intentional about it and have a vision that aligns with what residents want to see in our neighborhoods. Mixed use zoning is going to be the best way to do this, as we have affordable housing crisis, transportation issues, clean air issues. We're going to need to do that, but we need to do it in the right locations, like in the cairns and not east of Pepperwood on Wasatch, for example. I think that we need to connect with stakeholders, public-private partnerships, reach out to the state. As was mentioned, it seems that the city is doing less of that, so reinvest in that. Work with the Economic Development Department to figure out ways that we can support their department. Like Jim said, you know, we're still competing with the internet now. And so a lot of my thoughts about city planning are related to safer transportation and slowing down our speeds, which also has the benefit of increasing revenue at businesses. If you're driving through Sandy from Draper to get to downtown and you're a commuter, you're not going to stop at businesses. But if we slow those speeds down and have community-oriented developments, that's going to encourage people to come and shop and spend their money in Sandy.
I think it's pretty clear that I doubt that anyone up here would be advocating for paving over our green space and building everywhere. That's not what Sandy is all about, and I've never heard anyone advocate for that. The expansion of mixed use and the reuse and repurposing of some of our empty buildings. There's so many benefits to converting to mixed use. It attracts businesses. Businesses want to be close to people. People that are close to businesses don't need to drive. So it reduces traffic congestion, and we're facing a doubling of the population along the Wasatch Front over the next 25 or 30 years. We need to devise ways to reduce traffic. I actually think that being proximate to the point helps us in business development. We're not competing with them. Theirs is a completely different design, highly dense. We're not. So any businesses that want to be in the South Valley that don't want to be in that kind of city can choose to be in ours instead. Higher end, less dense. And Alan Matheson, who's the executive director of The Point, happens to live in Sandy. He's a neighbor of mine, and he has promised that he's going to steer business to Sandy that maybe won't choose that it's not right in The Point. So I think there are opportunities that abound for us in the near future.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Our next question from the audience is about your position on affordable housing in Sandy. And we'll start with Marcy, and you'll have 1 minute each. So have to squeeze it in. And here's what it specifically is. Of course, what is your position around affordable housing in Sandy? Should the city council have a role in fostering it? If so, how? How? And if not, why?
Yeah, so great question. Great, wherever you are, came up with that. Maybe many of you did, and that's why we got it. So something I've been reading a lot about, and thank you to the League of Cities and Towns for all they do to educate and inform us as members of the council and other councils across the state. I've been reading a lot about the missing middle, and the missing middle is a reality in Sandy. We are strong in single family homes, and we are strong in apartments. I don't think we need more apartments. What we are missing is the middle. We are missing, oh, this is just not enough time. Such a big question. We are missing that place where people go when they need to downsize from a single family home, because then that single family home opens up to a family who needs to upsize. Or we are missing people who are needing to start in something small so they can grow into something big. That's what I believe is essential to attacking the affordable housing. Housing affordability is a little different than affordable housing, but we get there, bloop, time is up.
Thank you, sorry. Well, the good news is that people can come up and talk to you afterwards, sorry. Okay.
All right, I'll do my best to be as quick as well. It's difficult. I think that we should carve in stone and put above every government agency everywhere, you cannot repeal the law of supply and demand. There is so much demand for housing throughout the whole state of Utah, not just in Sandy. And the problem is limited supply. And there's no other way long-term to solve this problem. I think there's some stopgap measures that we can take, and there are ways that we can do carve-outs to artificially lower the prices of housing. But in the end, the result is we're going to have to create enough housing to be able to meet that demand, which means we need to balance the single-family homes with a kind of high-density development in the areas that have the infrastructure to support it, particularly the area in the Cairns area right down here, and not throwing up apartment buildings everywhere, here, there, and everywhere throughout the city. So it's a supply and demand issue. We need to do everything we can to responsibly increase the supply in a way that does not alienate existing residents and does not affect our quality of life.
Thank you.
So we have Arcadia in terms of affordable housing. We have Arcadia Apartments. We have 2 of those. They cater to women and children. They have background checks. Anyone who has violence or convictions towards children or women cannot live there. It's meant to be a safe space for families based on their income. We also have 4 mobile home parks in Sandy. All of these are in District 1. And so all of our affordable housing, with the exception of 1 apartment building in District 2, is right here by the freeway and everywhere else. It's all in this part of the city. I don't think anything in the Cairns counts as affordable. I mean, the rent's like $2,000 or $3,000 a month. It's not affordable. I couldn't afford that. And so what we need to do is we need to build starter homes, small yards, homes. We've had a number of proposals that have been put forward that could help with that, including homes for first responders and teachers, where we could give them lowered interest rates. Thanks.
So I know from being a realtor that the state is short more than like 50,000 housing units, and it is the major driver of the homelessness crisis that we face in the Valley. So affordable housing is a super important thing for cities to lead out on through their zoning. I think that actually the Pace of Progress Committee is leading out on this. They have really good vision and values to develop a diverse community where people can afford to live. My oldest son is 20 and he can't afford to live here. His rent is 4 times what mine was growing up, and there's no chance he'd be able to buy a home like we have now. So we need to invest in all different types of housing where teachers and people who work in our community, people who work for the city, can afford to live in the city that they work and play in and that we love. That just seems fair to me. People who are from here, our children should not get pushed out of the community. So definitely the city needs to lead out on that. One thing we could do is look into accessory dwelling units and look at positive ways we can bring those to our city. There's lots of benefits of families living together health-wise and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also get to solve that's affordable housing in a minute and a half. Okay. I hope you all know that the state has required every city to come up with a moderate income housing plan. And Sandy has complied with that and done that. So we've approved ADUs. Those were allowed throughout the city. We have permitted HTRZs, housing in transit reinvestment zones. We have approved those. We have station area planning under consideration as well. We have transit-oriented developments in Sandy. So much of this solves a problem of housing on a for-rent basis, but what it misses is the for-sale housing. And that's the problem. That's where the missing middle, smaller houses, smaller lots can help. But we also have some city-owned land that I think we could use for a community land trust for building some homes as well.
So I think the city could orchestrate and put together a plan. I think it's going to take the whole village to do it. I don't think the city can finance it by any means, but we may be able to put together a strong public-private partnership. It would need to be ironclad with the developer and may be able to provide, you know, some vacant lot areas that we have at a reduced price and help with some of the zoning issues that may happen to then get some affordable housing into the community. I agree with what was said. I would prefer to build smaller lots and smaller houses than lots of apartments, but it may not be reasonable to be able to do that and still have it be, you know, housing that people can afford. So it's a tough one right now.
Okay, thanks everyone. Are we going to do another? Okay, sorry for that. Okie dokie. So this is also a two-part question, and so it's a minute. So speed answer. Okay, so it's basically the audience wants to know, what is your position on protecting the Sandy watershed? And what additional actions should be taken to engage residents and inform them about our water utility infrastructure system? And that is you. Oh, sorry. Pardon me.
Oh, I start?
Do you want me? Pardon? How much time? 1 minute.
1 minute. So I solved the housing crisis in 1 minute. Now I'm going to solve the water crisis.
You are.
When I ran for mayor again 2 years ago, I was asked a lot of questions. We were really in the heart of the drought. We had a wet winter this last year, and that made life a whole lot easier. But I went and investigated, and I was really heartened and impressed by how well Sandy City manages its water. You know, Sandy had cut down its watering of its public spaces by something like 20%, and they still look wonderful. I think the city is actually doing a very, very good job in terms of managing the resources. I think it'd be nice to provide incentives for residents to move more towards xeriscaping and other kinds of less water intensive use. But I think this is one area that the city is getting right.
I agree. Sandy City is doing an excellent job of engaging residents in protecting the watersheds. Our public utilities group has amazing signage up all the canyons. They have parks police that help manage that as well. I mean, the biggest threat to the watershed that I see at this point, and I don't have the exact numbers with me, but is the gondola potential up the canyon, and making sure that if that does become a reality, that we protect the watershed there and make sure that it doesn't hurt any of our resources. But I think Sandy does an excellent job with that in their communication.
Water is in my logo. It's super important to me. It's what makes life possible, and we need to cherish it. It's a huge concern statewide. There's a lot of things that are going to need to be done, and I appreciate everything that Sandy residents have done and the city has done, but there's going to be a lot more needed at the state level. And also lots of planning in Sandy City to address our infrastructure, our water infrastructure that's going to need to be rebuilt, relined, things like that in the future. But I would severely limit development in our most sensitive aquatic areas. That includes the mouth of the canyon. So yes, I fundamentally oppose that, simply out of risks that would come with it to the watershed. But it doesn't stop there. It's the ultimate goal is a mega development ski village at the mouth of the canyon at Lakai, and that poses grave concern for our watershed management. And I will stand against any big development like that that puts our water at risk.
I'm going to address both the watershed and the water supply. The thing that Sandy is doing right now that is incredibly beneficial to the watershed is we're refilling the underground aquifers. I've served on the Public Utilities Advisory Board for 2 years and on the Jordan River Commission. We are refilling those aquifers, which allow us to store water underground so it's not prone to evaporation. And that's really beneficial on a long-term basis. And in terms of our water supply, because that may be in part what is being asked and in part answered, Sandy has currently, in terms of water shares, 3 times the amount of water that we need to serve the public in a normal water year. In a drought year or an extreme drought year, we still have about 1.5 times the water that we need. So we don't have too much concern about growth, although conservation is always really beneficial. I think one thing we have to be concerned about is if the drought conditions get worse and worse and worse, are we going to be able to retain those water shares, or is there potential that the state may take them away?
So protecting the watershed is like top #1 priority when we're developing trails like the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And that's about where the watershed starts. So if you're familiar with Hidden Valley Park and then just the bench above it, that's where the watershed starts. So we have 4 major canyons that come into our watershed: Little Cottonwood, Rocky Mouth, Little Willow, and Big Willow. And so we work closely with the Public Utilities Department to make sure that we're designing those trails and up to Bell Canyon Reservoir and on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail correctly with the proper signage. And then we also enforce that with our park police officers. So it's important.
So I see our investment in the Central Wasatch Commission a little differently than Mr. DeKaiser. I served on the Central Wasatch Commission for 2 years, and at the top of all of our conversations was our watershed. And so many of you may or may not be aware of one of the committees within the Central Wasatch Commission. I served on this committee during my service there. It's the small projects. And sometimes we overlook the small things, but as we all know, small things add up to really big things. And the Small Projects Committee is focused entirely on, not entirely, there are some projects that some could consider not related to the watershed, but by and large, they are focused on the watershed, one of which is memorable, and that is doggy doo-doo bags. That Small Projects Committee is helping hikers who spend time in our beautiful canyons understand the need to protect the watershed by carrying those waste things with them back out of the canyon. That's just a concrete example.
Thank you. Okay. So we do apologize that it is very truncated and we have to be fast, but there are so many issues that are important to your constituents or potential constituents. However, I may have been a tad aggressive, and so we're going to let you have 1 minute and 30 seconds instead of just a minute for your closing statements. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to be doing these in the reverse order as the opening statements. And so we'll start with Aaron. And then Allison, I didn't know, do you wanted to come back up, or are you okay? You good? Okay. then Allison, then Scott, then Cindy, then Brooke, then Marcy, then Jim, and I'll remind you if it gets difficult. So 1 minute and 30 seconds, and let's go ahead and go, Aaron.
Well, thanks everyone for coming again. Like I said, I really appreciate you participating in the process, and I encourage everyone to go beyond what is said here and in the campaign literature. Look at people's voting records, look at people's financial disclosures, see if they're going to truly represent the people or not, because that is one of the most important things on the council. For too long, the council has been controlled by big moneyed interests, and residents' wishes, I've talked to hundreds of them, are cast aside, and that's no way to run the city. Again, from knocking over 20,000 doors in the past 3 years, the #1 issue I'm hearing from residents is public safety. We need to slow down our speeds. We need to have better design. We need to invest in our crosswalks. We need to look at transit planning, invest in transit. We need to oppose the gondola. 9 out of 10 Sandy City residents oppose it. Why would the state taxpayer pay so that the resorts and a developer are going to profit off your backs? It's completely unacceptable, but working on this for so long has been super encouraging because genuinely fiscal conservatives and canyon conservationists are coming together to protect our city's greatest natural resource, and it is certainly a threat to our watershed. And so we need to do those two things. We need to invest in the cairns, focus on raising revenues and good quality development projects that we can keep our taxes low and maintain a really high quality of life, because living in Sandy is an amazing place to live. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me to wrap up with my closing as well. Lots of great questions, and I really got to hand it out to the candidates and the residents for asking these great questions, and the league for providing us that opportunity. There was a lot of questions I did want to answer, so if you guys are curious, then catch me after. I've also worked on speeding, and I know that that's a huge priority with residents, is to be able to slow down Sandy as we are working with that, and to make sure that everyone is safe. We're safe when we're out there with our active transportation. Building on that is important to me so that residents can get to where they're going without needing to drive until they have to. Of course, we're in a very vehicle-centric community. We are built out, so Sandy is landlocked. We do need to look at density and where that's properly located. And I think everyone up here really agreed that kind of down here in this downtown Cairns area would be that place for that. I've worked with a lot of the departments, and I look forward to continue working with those departments to make sure that Sandy remains safe, that we remain a desirable place to live. And let's see, Cairns development. I think that was kind of it that I wanted to wrap up. And once again, thank you guys. Thank everybody for coming out and being a part of this process. Every vote matters. Every vote matters. So ask your questions away. Thank you.
So thank you everybody for being here in the audience, and the people that are online. Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on. I'm just a common sense approach person that was appointed by the city council in January of 2022. And I started serving with the city council, and I found it very challenging, and that's why I decided to run. I mean, it's really a hard job, but it also is very rewarding at times. I have 40 years experience with the city, between the city council, the fire department, and Parks and Recreation. I do know and understand all of our city budget book and all of the departments and capital projects and funding for those capital projects, because we were involved in it for so long. And I just wanted to say, we live in a great city. I mean, the public safety is great. Police and fire are awesome, but we also have so many nice parks and trails, and we have friendly people and friendly neighborhoods and people willing to serve and, work on Sandy Pride projects and build parks and build trails. And, I just can't think of a better place to live than, here. And it's just been good. It's been fun. Thank you.
City council service can be an incredibly gratifying job. You get a chance to represent your constituents, to do your best for them. We had a primary election recently, and I came out on top, and I I hope the reason for that is that people think I'm doing a good job because I'm really trying. People have asked me, what have you done to deserve another term? And I think that's an excellent question. I saved the bulk waste collection program. I feel very proud of that. I know people appreciate that. It's now a law in Sandy that we collect bulk waste at the curbside, so a mayor cannot change that in the future. I have voted against 3 property tax increases, having found another way to balance the budget. I passed that ethics pledge of fair campaign practices that was alluded to earlier. Honesty, ethics, fairness, integrity are of the utmost importance to me. There are some people in this race who did not take the pledge of fair campaign practices, but that is one of the singular accomplishments that I feel proud of. And I always vote in favor of public safety. I gave our police officers a 23% pay raise, and I set aside funds in an excess budget to increase staffing of fire and paramedics. So I think I'm doing what the people of Sandy want, and if they'll have me again, I'll do it again. Thank you.
Okay, so the city council's role, there's 3 big things we do, right? We do the budget, we do oversight of anything that's happening in the city, and we put land use or code into place. Things about me that fall into those categories that I haven't told you yet, because I'm sure you all want to know more about me. I really feel like I have a pulse on our community. I've grown up here, I've lived here, my kids, I'm raising them here. I'm involved in a lot of different aspects of the city. I just feel like I understand what most residents are thinking, and I feel the same way. Second, I do have an MBA, Master's of Business Administration. I was a global supply chain manager for 10 years for clients like Apple, Adobe, Comcast. I understand the budget. I understand the business. I'm a nerd in the aspect that I really do love the budget. I think it's fun, and I love finding alternative ways to spend our money or how to be more efficient. And I just think that we have to be careful when we're talking about these things to make sure that we understand that all of these amazing programs and opportunities that we could put in place cost money. So we have to be really careful that we're spending our money on the things that we need as a city and not necessarily the things that we want or that sound amazing. We have to be careful with how we spend our money. Please vote for Brooke.
Sorry, I like to get out and move a little bit. So there are a lot of titles that, over the years I've had. Some of my favorites: wife, my husband's here. Bill is my constant champion. Mother, I have 4 children, 3 married, and 1, finishing his first year of college, and we'll see what lies in store for him. And most recently, Cece, which is my grandma name. And my grandson, Jack, was born on my birthday, so that's extra special. But in terms of this forum tonight, there's one title that I am really proud of, and that is the Taxpayers Watchdog. I have worked for almost 4 years now to protect taxpayers. I think it is essential to understand the needs of the city and balance those needs against the need to protect taxpayers from unnecessary tax burden. So I know we're going to go out here after. There's a lot of ways I have done that. I believe in giving concrete evidence. I don't like to just say something. I like to provide evidence that I've done it. So if you want to meet with me after, I've listed 6 specific ways that I've been the taxpayers watchdog. I believe it is essential that we understand that the tax burden is real, especially right now. We have seen so many suffering from the weight of inflation, suffering from a lot of things that we have to be very careful if we are making a decision to raise taxes. So yes, meet the needs of the city, but also keep in mind the burdens that we might put on taxpayers.
Thank you.
So I sat down in my opening statement, so I think I should stand up for my closing statement. Very grateful to all of you for coming. Very grateful for everybody that's up here. I've run for office enough to know that I haven't learned from the first kick of the mule, and I keep running because I care very much about what the future of Sandy City is going to look like. And we all have the opportunity to decide what that future is going to be. When I moved to Sandy City was essentially the crown jewel along the Wasatch Front in terms of city government. And part of that was because we were working in conjunction with state government, with federal government, that we weren't an island unto ourselves. And I think to some degree over the years, we've lost some of that. We've lost more of that than I'd like to see happen. And I'd like to be able to be part of rejuvenating those kinds of relationships, rejuvenating Sandy City's stature as the premier city government that everybody else in the state looks to see how well it should be done. That's what we used to be. I think that's what we can be going forward. And I want to be able to help build those relationships. I want to be able to build bridges with stakeholders that we've neglected, with private enterprise, with state government, the state legislature. And I think together we can make sure that Sandy City's future is even brighter than its present. Thank you.
Now I'd like to ask everyone here to join me in a round of applause to all of our candidates for a great discussion. Betty.
All the candidates for your time and commitment, and we hope this has given you a good platform for interacting with the residents. We'd like to thank the audience, both in person and online, and we hope this has provided good information and been helpful. We encourage you to continue looking into the candidates. If you have questions and have not had a chance to talk to them, they are available out at the tables in the lobby for half an hour-ish after this. The League also has a Vote 411 website, which is vote411.org, which provides key dates, information. The candidates were also asked 5 questions, priorities for the city, their thoughts on funding for infrastructure expenditures on new projects, views on the current delivery of public safety services and the fiscal year 2024 budget, view on transitional housing, and Sandy's role in supporting those with medically vulnerable conditions, City Council's role in ensuring affordable multifamily housing for those earning at or below area median income, and those that have responded, their responses are on that site. The Salt Lake Tribune also provided a voter guide on August 18th. Utah makes voting easy and accessible, but you have to do your part. If you have not already registered or have moved since the last election, the League of Women Voters has voter registration, and the county clerk's office, I believe, is still here to help with changing registrations. Ballots will be mailed on October 31st. If you don't have a ballot by November 14th, please contact the Salt Lake County Clerk's office for a replacement ballot. Election day is November 21st. Mail-in ballots need to be postmarked by the 20th. The Vote 411 site also lists all these dates, as I'm sure other city and county sites do as well. Please make your voice heard. Go out and vote. And I'm sure since you're here and care enough to be here that you're going to do that. The League of Women Voters believes events like tonight's candidate forum are essential to ensuring good governance and thriving communities. We invite you to join us and lend a hand in our mission to empower voters and defend democracy. If you have questions, wish to join us, want more information, We're available after this as well, or you can go to lwvsl.org. On behalf of the league, thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Yeah.